In January 2026, a Paris court convicted 10 people of cyber harassment against France's First Lady, Brigitte Macron. Their crime, insisting relentlessly across social media for months that she was secretly a man. A few months earlier, in the United States, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated at a speaking event. Within weeks, members of his own movement, people who shared his politics, his worldview, his audience, turned on his grieving widow, Erica. They measured her collarbones. They scrutinized her childhood yearbook photos. They declared her an invert, their word for someone secretly transgender. Charlie Kirk had built his brand on anti-trans rhetoric. He once called transgender people a throbbing middle finger to God, and the machine he helped build ate his family alive. Welcome to the world of transvestigation, the conspiracy theory that nearly every public figure you've ever seen is secretly the opposite sex. And if you think this is just internet weirdness, think again. There's a body count, and the bill runs into the hundreds of millions. This is Signal Watch. I am the Watcher. We chronicle the current state of the epistemic collapse, how conspiracy theories operate, who believes them, and what they cost. Today we're going deep on transvestigation, the conspiracy that says your favorite actress is secretly a man, that Michelle Obama is Big Mike, that the elites undergo secret gender reassignment surgery as a satanic initiation rite. We'll look at what believers claim to see, why they think the powerful would do this, who gets hurt, and how $250 million in political strategy created the perfect ecosystem for this particular strain of madness to flourish. And along the way, we'll encounter one of the darkest ironies in modern conspiracy culture. A movement so hungry, it inevitably devours the people who feed it. So what is a transvestigation? The term is a portmanteau. Transgender plus investigation. The practice emerged on YouTube around 2016 and 2017, pioneered by creators with names like Mr. E3000, Apostle Laura Lee, and John Humanity. Lee ran a website called Transvestigator.com and produced a video series called Hollywood. Humanity compiled a documentary called Elite Gender Inversion. Facebook groups swelled to over 17,000 members. The method works like this. Take a photograph of a celebrity or politician, superimpose geometric overlays, skeletal diagrams, protractors, straight lines. Measure the shoulder to hip ratio, measure the jawline angle, check the Q angle of the knees, examine the clavicle slope, look at hand proportions. Some practitioners claim to analyze the energy coming out of the eyes. If any feature deviates from a narrow idealized template of masculinity or femininity, and here's the key part, a template that most actual human beings also deviate from, then the subject is declared inverted. That's the community's word, not transgender. Inverted. As if someone flipped a switch. Researchers have a different name for this method. They call it digital phrenology, the direct descendant of the 19th century pseudoscience that claimed to determine character and intelligence by measuring bumps on the skull. Both systems share the same fundamental error. They take the enormous natural variation in human anatomy and force it through a rigid classificatory framework, then treat deviations from the template as evidence of hidden truth rather than, normal human diversity. And both systems, it's worth noting, were historically deployed against the same people. Phrenology was used to scientifically prove the inferiority of women and non-white people. Transvestigation disproportionately targets Black women. Michelle Obama, Serena Williams, Beyonce, and researcher Julia Serrano documents studies showing that white subjects tend to perceive Black women as more masculine. So the digital phrenologists are unconsciously replicating the racial biases of the analog phrenologists. The pseudoscience updates, but the bigotry stays the same. No transvestigation target has endured more sustained abuse than Michelle Obama. Snopes traces the conspiracy to at least 2008, during Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. But it gained real traction in July 2014 when comedian Joan Rivers told paparazzi, offhandedly as a joke, that Obama was gay and Michelle was a tranny. Rivers died 2 months later from complications during a routine medical procedure. Conspiracy theorists immediately claimed the Obamas had her killed for revealing the secret. Alex Jones became the loudest amplifier. He used slurs and claimed Michelle Obama had shoulders that are wider than a man's, which physiologically doesn't happen, which of course it does. Human bodies come in every proportion. Podcaster Jason Whitlock devoted a 2-hour episode to the theory, racking up over 300,000 views. Joe Rogan discussed the Big Mike memes, 859,000 views on the clip. In February 2025, Errol Musk, Elon's father, stated flatly on a podcast that Michelle Obama is a man. Elected officials have promoted it. Kentucky State Representative Tim Couch pushed it on Facebook. A West Virginia nonprofit director called Michelle Obama an ape in heels. She was fired. In February 2026, Donald Trump shared a racist video on Truth Social depicting the Obamas as apes. It stayed up for approximately 12 hours. In her memoir, Becoming, Michelle Obama wrote about these conspiracies. She addressed the birther theory that stalked her husband, and she asked the question that should haunt everyone who spreads this material. What if someone with an unstable mind loaded a gun and drove to Washington? What if that person went looking for our girls? University of Kentucky professor Aria Halliday captures why this conspiracy is so potent. It's a 3-for-1. Believers, she explains, get to express their feelings about trans women, their feelings about Michelle Obama, and their feelings about white people being replaced, all in one place. Racism, transphobia, and misogyny converge in a single meme. That efficiency is part of what makes it so durable. And make no mistake about the scale. A single Big Mike tweet after Michelle Obama's 2024 DNC speech received nearly 800,000 views and 10,000 likes in one day. This isn't fringe, this is mainstream internet culture. And now here's where the story takes its most revealing turn, because the Transvestigation machine doesn't just target liberals and black women, it targets everyone, including the people who built it. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, was shot through the neck while speaking at Utah Valley University on September 10th, 2025. He died. And almost immediately, the conspiracy apparatus he'd helped construct turned on his widow. Candace Owens, herself a major amplifier of transvestigation content, whose series on Brigitte Macron garnered over 5 million views, released a multi-part documentary called Bride of Charlie. It included childhood yearbook photos showing Erica Kirk with short cropped hair. Owens's fans took it from there. They scrutinized Erica's straight collarbones, her low-set ears, her thigh gap, her little boy hips. They called her an invert. Charlie Kirk himself was transvestigated posthumously. A Facebook group called Transvestigation Disclosure Now 2.0 declared he had a female skull and female hands. They called him a dashing lady. Think about that for a moment. A man who called trans people a throbbing middle finger to God, who made anti-trans rhetoric the centerpiece of his political brand, murdered, and within weeks, the movement he fed was measuring his widow's bones and declaring him a secret woman. Ben Shapiro called Owens's video absolutely satanic. Turning Point USA directed its staff to call Owens evil and demonic. University of Southampton researcher Lexi Webster nailed the insight. Nobody is safe from this kind of conspiratorial discourse, including those on the right who operate in so-called gender-critical spaces as thought leaders on how to be transphobic. This is the defining feature of transvestigation as a conspiracy system. It has no limiting principle. Once you've accepted the premise that hidden trans identity is everywhere, that you can detect it by measuring bones, that the powerful are all inverted, there is no logical reason to exempt anyone. Your allies, your leaders, your spouse. The more aggressively you police gender, the more gender becomes something that must be policed in everyone. The call is coming from inside the house. So, and this is a question worth asking with a straight face, why? Why do believers think powerful people would secretly change sex? The central claim is something called elite gender inversion, or EGI. The belief is that celebrities undergo secret gender reassignment as an initiation ritual, a sacrifice, essentially, to gain access to fame, wealth, and power. As one Vice investigation found, believers think elites have traded their gender with an evil force in exchange for power. The icon at the center of all this is Baphomet, the androgynous figure drawn by the French occultist Eliphas Lévy in 1856. Baphomet has both male and female features, with the Latin inscriptions Salve and Coagula separate and bring together. In transvestigation communities, this figure is treated as proof that the elite worship a transgender deity. Targeted celebrities are called Baphos. In February 2024, comedian Cat Williams told Joe Rogan that transgenderism originated from the demon Baphomet. The actual historical Baphomet, for the record, originated as a fabricated accusation against the Knights Templar in the 14th century, probably a corruption of the name Mohammed. It has nothing to do with gender, but conspiracy theories aren't history seminars. Then there's the rationale that reveals the deepest anxieties driving this movement. Some believers argue that by placing secretly transgender attractive women in media, think actresses, pop stars, models, the elites are engineering a trap. Straight men become attracted to these figures, not knowing they're really men, and are thereby turned gay without their knowledge or consent. This claim maps with remarkable precision onto anxieties that are 400 years old. In Shakespeare's England, Puritan pamphleteers railed against the theater, where of course all female roles were played by boys and young men, warning that cross-dressing actors would degenerate into women and corrupt the audiences who watched them. The fear that gender performance is contagious, that seeing it will infect you, that attraction itself is a weapon. This is not new. The internet just gave it new vocabulary. And this is where a recent finding becomes relevant. A March 2026 article in The Atlantic reported on research by Charlesworth, Banerjee, and Doyle showing that as trans issues became dominant in national politics, explicit anti-trans bias spiked 16% between 2021 and 2024. But here's the thing that surprised the researchers. Homophobia spiked too. Explicit anti-gay bias jumped 10 points in the same period, reversing a decades-long decline. The two bigotries, it turns out, are not separate tanks. They're connected vessels. Pour political energy into one and the other rises. The transvestigation movement, with its obsession that secret trans people are turning men gay, is the conspiracy theory expression of exactly this dynamic. Anti-trans politics reactivated homophobia that was, if not gone, at least diminishing. And the conspiracy world built a grand unified theory out of both. Transvestigation doesn't exist in isolation. It sits within a broader family of conspiracy theories that share its core method, scrutinizing physical features to claim someone isn't who they appear to be. The Alex Jones's Bill Hicks theory first appeared on forums around 2006 and went viral via a 2013 video titled Irrefutable Proof That Alex Jones is Bill Hicks. The theory claims that legendary Texas comedian Bill Hicks faked his 1994 death from pancreatic cancer and was recruited by the CIA to become Alex Jones. Believers cite physical similarities, their shared Austin roots, and the fact that Hicks's former producer immediately began collaborating with Jones. The meta-irony is perfect. The world's most famous conspiracy theorist is deeply annoyed by the one conspiracy theory about himself. Jones told Joe Rogan, "Bill Hicks is in the ground, folks. This isn't funny. This is sick." Then there's the Challenger crew conspiracy. Since about 2015, posts have circulated claiming that the 7 astronauts killed in the 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger explosion are actually alive, living under their same names or minor variants in a kind of witness protection program. Believers point to real people, a Richard Scobie, who became a Chicago marketing executive, a Judith Resnick, who became a Yale law professor, and declare them the surviving astronauts. Snopes and PolitiFact have debunked this repeatedly, noting that the supposed doubles had independent careers overlapping with the astronauts before the disaster. But the theory persists because it follows the same logic as transvestigation. Here are 2 photos that look similar. Therefore, a vast conspiracy exists. Paul is dead. The 1969 theory that Paul McCartney died and was replaced by a lookalike is the grandfather of all celebrity replacement conspiracies. The Avril Lavigne replacement theory, that she died and was replaced by a woman named Melissa, originated from a 2011 Brazilian blog whose opening line literally admits, "This blog was created to show how conspiracy theories can look true." Other targets include Eminem, Kanye West, and Melania Trump, and McCartney himself has been transvestigated. What unites all of these is the fundamental conspiratorial premise that nothing in public life is authentic. Every face is a mask, every body is a costume, and if you just draw enough lines on enough photos, you can see through it all. It's the dream of secret knowledge, the Gnostic promise that the world is a lie, and you are one of the few who can perceive the truth. One thread that runs through transvestigation discourse is the appeal to history, the claim that gender deception is ancient, pervasive, and ongoing. And like most conspiracy appeals to history, it takes real facts and warps them. The real history is fascinating on its own terms. In ancient Greek theater, 5th century BC, all male casts were standard. This wasn't a conspiracy, it was a religious mandate. Theater was part of festivals honoring Dionysus, and the conventions reflected the era's social structure. In Elizabethan England, women were forbidden from the professional stage. Boy actors, typically between 10 and 22, played all female roles, including Shakespeare's cross-dressing heroines like Rosalind in As You Like It and Viola in Twelfth Night, who are female characters disguised as men played by male actors. It's layers of gender performance all the way down. In Japanese kabuki theater, women were banned from performing in 1629, and male onagata actors have played female roles ever since. Now, transvestigation believers don't typically cite this theatrical history in a sophisticated way. They don't engage with the scholarship on Elizabethan gender performance or kabuki aesthetics. Instead, they fold it into a flat narrative. Gender deception has always been the tool of the powerful. One conspiracy blog claims there is a third category of people who are transgendered from birth and are assigned roles in society of influence, power, and fame. Biblical passages are cherry-picked. Masonic concepts of salve et coagula, separate and bring together, are taken as literal mandates for physical sex changes rather than metaphors for spiritual development. But here's what's interesting about the Puritan connection. In Shakespeare's time, there was an active pamphlet war against the theater. Anti-theatrical writers like Philip Stubbs warned that cross-dressed actors would corrupt audiences, effeminize men, and blur God-given gender distinctions. The arguments sound remarkably like modern transvestigation rhetoric. The same fear that gender performance is contagious, that it's part of an organized campaign against natural order, that if you see it, you might catch it. The difference is that the Puritans were arguing about a real practice, male actors in female roles, and drawing wrong conclusions about its effects. Modern transvestigators are arguing about an imaginary practice, secret elite gender reassignment, and drawing wrong conclusions about its existence. The paranoia upgraded from analog to digital, but the operating system is the same. So who are the transvestigators? What makes someone look at a photo of Taylor Swift and think, I need to measure her clavicle? There's no specific polling on transvestigation belief, but the psychological architecture is extremely well mapped. The core cognitive mechanism is apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random data, a term coined by German psychiatrist Klaus Conrad in 1958. A 2023 study in the journal Eye Perception found that people who saw objects in random snowy pictures, essentially visual noise, were significantly more likely to believe conspiracy theories. The researchers concluded that endorsing unfounded beliefs is not associated with increased perceptual sensitivity, you're not seeing more, but rather with a higher likelihood of reporting something when there is actually nothing there. You're not sharper, you're looser with your pattern matching. The landmark 2017 review by Douglas, Sutton, and Sachaka identifies 3 psychological needs driving conspiracy belief. First, epistemic needs, the desire for understanding, for a framework that makes a confusing world make sense. Second, existential needs, the desire for control and security in the face of powerlessness. And third, social needs, the desire for in-group belonging, for community. Transvestigation satisfies all three. It provides a comprehensive framework for understanding celebrity culture, politics, and the entertainment industry, all secretly controlled by gender-inverted Baphomet worshippers. It gives practitioners a sense of agency. They can detect what billions cannot, and it creates intense community bonds through shared language. Inverted, EGI, BAFO, participation rituals, and the act of drawing lines on photos, and the dopamine hit of discovering new evidence. It's a social game with the trappings of detective work. A 2019 study by Marchlewska and colleagues looked at Polish Catholics and found that roughly 30% endorsed what they called gender conspiracy beliefs, the conviction that gender equality activists represent a secret ideology designed to harm traditional values. The strongest predictor was not religiosity per se, but what they called Catholic collective narcissism, a defensive, fragile group identification. Not, I'm proud to be Catholic, but Catholics are under attack and the world doesn't appreciate us enough. That defensive posture maps perfectly onto the transvestigation community's self-image as persecuted truth-tellers surrounded by deceived masses. The broader demographic data on conspiracy thinking comes from a 2024 study across 21 countries with over 44,000 respondents published in scientific reports. Lower education was the strongest predictor of conspiracy belief, followed by lower income, political extremism, especially on the right, and a general need for cognitive closure. PRRI data shows 25% of Republicans qualify as QAnon adherents versus 9% of Democrats, and Transvestigation sits squarely in QAnon-adjacent spaces, sharing platforms, creators, and audiences. Julia Serrano's analysis offers the most specific psychological account of transvestigation. She describes what she calls the two filing cabinets mindset. Humans unconsciously sort everyone they encounter into male and female categories, and once someone is categorized, we filter away ambiguous cues. Transvestigators have been primed by the political environment, by the media they consume, to believe every celebrity is secretly trans. So they reverse the filtering. Instead of ignoring ambiguous features, they seek them. And because human bodies display enormous natural variation, they find them every time. Confirmation bias does the rest. Here's where we need to talk about money, because transvestigation didn't emerge in a vacuum. It emerged in an ecosystem that was deliberately constructed at enormous expense by people with names and budgets. After the Supreme Court's 2015 same-sex marriage ruling in Obergefell, conservative organizations actively searched for a replacement wedge issue. Terry Schilling, president of the American Principles Project, told the New York Times, and I want you to hear how candid this is, "We knew we needed to find an issue that the candidates were comfortable talking about, and we threw everything at the wall." What stuck was transgender identity. 3 organizations drove the strategy. Alliance Defending Freedom, $104 million in 2022 revenue, designated an anti-LGBTQ hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, authored model legislation deployed in at least 34 states. The Heritage Foundation, $329 million in assets, created Project 2025, which equates being transgender with pornography, and the American Principles Project spent $18 million on anti-trans ads in the 2024 cycle alone. The total spend is staggering. In the 2024 election, Republicans spent approximately $215 million on anti-trans network television ads, more than they spent on immigration ads, more than on the economy. Trump's campaign alone spent $19 million on 2 ads that aired over 55,000 times with the tagline, "Kamala is for they/them. President Trump is for you." And it worked, at least as a political tool. North Carolina's HB 2 bathroom bill in 2016 served as the prototype. It cost the state an estimated $3.76 billion over 12 years and the governor his reelection. But it proved that targeting trans people was politically mobilizing. The strategy was, in the words of one analyst, sharpened, refined, and repeatedly redeployed. Pew Research documents the shift. Support for requiring trans people to use birth sex bathrooms rose from 41% in 2022 to 49% in 2025. Support for banning gender-affirming care for minors rose from 46 to 56%. Support for trans athletes competing only on birth sex teams rose from 58 to 66%. The political operatives found their wedge, and they hammered it relentlessly. Now, here's the crucial link. How does 215 million in TV ads about bathrooms and youth sports connect to people on Facebook measuring Michelle Obama's shoulders? The pipeline works like this. Political rhetoric establishes rigid binary sex categories as sacred and immutable. This normalizes the scrutiny of people's bodies. The groomer narrative, which was itself a deliberate political construction, casts trans people as predatory deceivers, and transvestigation positions itself as protective detective work, an extension of that logic to its natural extreme. If trans people are secret predators and the elites are all corrupt, then of course the elites are all secretly trans. The ADL documented this feedback loop. Anti-trans content reverberates across the internet, onto our television screens, into our legislatures, and back again. Scientific American reported that continuous exposure to anti-trans rhetoric from multiple platforms and politicians contributes to radicalization. Transvestigation is not a random aberration. It is anti-trans politics taken to its logical conclusion. It is the QAnon wing of a strategy that was designed in boardrooms and funded by billionaires. And as that Atlantic article I mentioned documents, the one on the Charlesworth, Banaji, and Doyle research, the political weaponization of trans identity didn't just spike anti-trans attitudes. It reversed a decades-long decline in homophobia, 16% spike in explicit anti-trans bias, 10-point jump in anti-gay bias, same period, connected vessels. The conspiracy world's obsession with elites turning men gay through secretly trans celebrities isn't just paranoia. It's the fever dream version of a real dynamic. Anti-trans politics reactivated anti-gay animus that had been receding for 20 years. Let's talk about what all of this costs in human terms. Iman Khelif, Algerian Olympic boxer, cisgender woman. After the 2024 Paris Olympics, Elon Musk, J.K. Rowling, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance amplified false claims that she was transgender. France's Office for the Fight Against Crimes Against Humanity opened a criminal investigation. The IOC official who defended Khelif received death threats. Khelif said, "The bullying can destroy people. It can kill people's thoughts, spirit, and mind." Brigitte Macron, her daughter, testified about the toll the conspiracy took on her mother and their family. Macron told French TV that harassers broke into my tax website and modified my identity. 10 criminal convictions followed. Boston Children's Hospital received multiple bomb threats after far-right media spread conspiracy theories about its gender clinic. For actual transgender people, the environment created by this political strategy and its conspiracy offshoots is measurably devastating. The Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law finds that transgender people experience 93.7 violent victimizations per 1,000 persons, compared to 21 per 1,000 among non-LGBT people. That's roughly 4.5 times the rate. Since 2013, HRC has documented 399 transgender and gender-expansive people killed by violence in the United States. Nearly 74% were Black trans women. GLAAD's tracking desk documented 932 anti-LGBTQ incidents across 49 states in a single year. That's 2.5 per day. 52% specifically targeted transgender people, a 14% increase from the prior year. The incidents included 140 bomb threats, 85 assaults, and 10 deaths. Transgender youth bear a staggering burden. The CDC's 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey found 26% of transgender and questioning students attempted suicide in the past year, versus 5% of cisgender males. The Trevor Project's 2024 survey found 90% of LGBTQ youth said their well-being was negatively impacted by recent politics. 45% of transgender and non-binary youth reported their families had considered moving to a different state. And let's not forget the cisgender women who don't conform to narrow femininity standards. Caster Semenya has fought a years-long legal battle over testosterone regulations. The Williams sisters have been called the Williams brothers. The Russian Tennis Federation president was banned for a year and fined $25,000 for that particular slur. This is what the conspiracy costs, not in the abstract, in bomb threats, in suicides, in women afraid to compete, in families considering exile within their own country. Here's what I keep coming back to. The transvestigation conspiracy has no limiting principle. That's what makes it different from, say, a conspiracy about a specific event. Once you accept the premise that gender can be secretly inverted, that you can detect it by measuring bones, that the powerful all do it, there is no logical stopping point. The conspiracy will eventually transvestigate everyone, including the people promoting it. It already has. The Facebook group administrator who argued Henry Cavill was trans was herself accused of being trans and ousted from her own page. That self-consuming quality isn't a bug. It's a feature of the underlying logic. When you insist that biological sex is absolutely binary, absolutely immutable, and absolutely determinative of how a person should look, and then you go searching for deviations from that standard, you will find them in every single human being on Earth. Because the standard is a fiction, not sex itself, but the idea that sex maps perfectly and invariably onto a narrow set of physical proportions. It doesn't. It never has. The academic literature asks whether transvestigations represent authentic ideology or inauthentic practices that only fan the flames of antagonism. The answer, and the research supports this, is that the distinction has collapsed. When mainstream political actors spend hundreds of millions of dollars insisting biological sex is immutable and trans people are dangerous deceivers, when laws mandate body-based classification and bathroom surveillance, the logic of inspecting everyone's shoulders and jawlines follows naturally. Transvestigation is not an aberration of anti-trans politics. It is anti-trans politics arriving at its destination. This has been Signal Watch. I am the watcher. The signal is degrading, but we're still tracking.